Hi, Peter.
Hi, Anna.
Nice to see you.
I am for some reason not hearing you. I wonder why. Let's see. Are you hearing me?
I hear you.
I hear you now. I
Okay, good,
I
good,
think I
good.
must have had my own computer muted here somehow.
Okay,
Right.
okay, very good.
Yeah.
Nice to
Well,
see you.
it's nice to see you. Thank you for hosting it today. I don't know how many people we'll have. We know that some of our regulars aren't going to be able to make it today.
Jim.
Yeah, good. Nice to see you, Jim. You're
Let
there.
me log in. He's gonna be in a moment, yes. Hi, Jim. Hi, Jim.
Hi, Jim.
How are you?
Hello, Peter.
Nice to see you.
To see you.
Yeah.
How is everything preparing the Circle School for the beginning of the year?
Oh, we are in the last minute rush to get the last of the students who want to enroll. Rush to get our staffing in place. We've had some staff turnover this year. Rush to get the building ready. It's yeah. This is the busy week and a half.
I could imagine, like completely.
Yeah.
Oh, Cami. I don't know Cami, but we'll introduce ourselves.
Right.
Hello. Hi. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Anna and Peter, you look like you're ensconced in your usual Zoom locations.
Yes, I am in my usual Zoom location at home in my study. Yeah. I have lots of windows here. I have one here, and two in front of me. So it's kind of like.
Yeah, I got windows galore here. I'll show you.
Oh,
actually, it's too bright, but I got windows all around.
Are you at home or is this at school?
This is at school. I'm in the library at school.
Yeah. So you've got the kind of background that all the academicians want.
Yeah.
You look like you're an intellectual there.
That's right. And if I turn the other way, it's so bright it whites out everything else. But yeah, this is the kind of fake background that some people might use.
That's right, exactly.
Yeah.
Hey, that's Matt Shumsky. Hey, Matt.
Hi, Matt.
Hey, how's it going?
Haven't seen you for a while.
I know. I've been absent. It's good to be back, though. Life has been extraordinarily busy the last year, but
wow.
Yeah, I'm ready to re-engage and have the time and space to. So I'm excited.
Good.
Hi, Heather. She's still logging in.
Well, maybe we'll give it another minute and then we'll introduce ourselves. We've got a somewhat different group than our usual. We've got some people who haven't been here very much, and we're missing some of the regulars because of their schedules. Hi, Melissa. Nice to see you.
Hey.
Good. And Heather, are you there? Are you hearing me? There we go. Are you hearing, Heather?
Yeah, now I am. For some reason it wasn't working before, but now it is.
All right, good. And Miriam, nice to see you. So,
Hi.
So maybe we can get started. And I think this one especially, it'd be good to go around and do introductions. We always do introductions at the beginning because we don't necessarily remember who everybody is, and at least I don't. And And also it's an opportunity to just say a word or two about where you're at in your life at the moment.
Looks like Peter is frozen.
Oh, I might have frozen him because I asked him to be a host also, and that might have frozen his. Ah, hi, Peter. Let me see. Okay, hold on.
Hello, Sonia.
Oh, okay.
Hi, Anna. Hi, Peter. Hi, all.
I don't know exactly what happened there, but Anna, can you start with introducing yourself?
Okay, let me introduce myself first, and then I'll call somebody. So my name is Anna Marjanovic Shane. I'm originally from a country that does not exist anymore, Yugoslavia, and I'm going in about few days, 10 days to Belgrade, Serbia, to spend about 2 months there on a project connected to my overall project of studying democratic or democratizing education on various levels, which will be very interesting. And also in this case, various cultural offers, they call them, for children, which is education outside of school, or in some cases it used to be a one of a kind early childhood education center that worked as a cultural institution, not as an educational institution, which we are studying. And there is a lot more going on, but I'll leave that for another occasion. And just a call. Let me just make a short announcement. I may be away for a while from my desk, but I try to make Peter a co-host. You will all have a possibility to share anything. I have some things going on in my house, and there is nobody else to take care of it, and so. It depends on who appears at what time here to have my attention. So, Jim, please introduce yourself.
Hi all, I'm Jim Reitmulder. I am a founding staff member at the Circle School in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. At this moment, I'm sitting in the library at school, and we are in the very hectic rush of the last week before school starts next week.
Great. Cami.
Hi guys, I'm Cami Justice Smith. I was a former public school teacher turned school founder in Texas, and I recently have moved to Virginia, and I am a graduate student at VCU starting this semester.
Great. Matt.
Hey, everybody. My name is Matt Shumsky. I was involved with the group several months ago, but I haven't been here in a while. Life got really busy for me. I finished my graduate program at the University of Oregon and also studied self-directed education there. I was involved with starting a Liberated Learner Center here in Oregon. And I'm currently working on a literature synthesis of self-directed education as an alternative to school, and have another project in mind for after that. But it's really great to be back, and I'm looking forward to participating more.
Great. Great. Heather.
Hi there, everybody. My name is Heather. I live in near Santa Barbara, California, where I, in the fall of 2020, opened a self-directed learning community, and we're continuing to grow. And we're nature-based, so we in COVID times we met outside, for some obvious reasons, but also that's one of our core values. So we're continuing to grow, and it's been a lot of work, and we're getting ready for our third year now. We're going to start right after Labor Day. So
Great. Great. Melissa.
Hi, everyone. Melissa Bradford. I live in the Chicago area, and I founded a Sudbury school there in the Chicago suburbs. I also teach full-time at DePaul University in the Educational Leadership Program and a couple other programs there. I got my doctorate in curriculum studies, so I have been kind of thinking about how do we, how can we talk about, the self-directed education contexts as having a curriculum, or can't we? So, so I'm really interested in this topic.
Sonia, it's so nice to see you and with your new last name there.
Thank you. Hi. It's been a while. Meantime, a lot of life happened, if I can say that. I'm Sonia. I'm in Cluj-Napoca in Green School, Romania, which is a self-directed space in nature mainly. I'm researching sense of belonging and emotional security. And with this project, I've been visiting Jim and Anna and other
Oops, we lost you.
I got blocked.
Okay.
That's fine. Not a very fortunate time, I would say, for my research in USA, because it was a lot of money just to stay inside the house because COVID didn't allow me to travel that much. So I paused it a bit. I will come back to it. Currently, we are exactly like Jim running to prepare the opening of the school, just that we have 2 more weeks because we start on the 12th. And this year is a big step for Green School because we doubled the number of people in our team because kids do not want to focus on what we know already. They are above us with their interests, so we cannot provide this. So we needed to find people who can provide them. And it's nice to see that I know a lot of people in this group. Nice to be back. Hi, David.
Great. Mariam?
Hi, my name is Mariam. I'm from Iran, based in Greater Paris area at the moment. I'm working on a project with Melissa on how numeracy and mathematics knowledge develops in students and children in a self-directed educational setting. But for now and for the next month, I will be focusing on running an exhibition of my paintings here, so of researching. And I was supposed to start working with École Dynamique, which was the only Sudbury school in Paris after the pressures of the government. But unfortunately, the school is closed down and I missed that opportunity. There is another democratic school in Paris that they would be happy to have me in their team. And they are also thinking of developing a new school in south of Paris. And, finding a program for it that answers the requirements of the government, but still is democratic. I'm still not sure if it is interesting enough for me to participate because I'm really interested in the Sudbury model. And as soon as you have to provide some activities and impose them on the children, it's not really my type. But on the other hand, it's a good opportunity. So I don't know. I'm thinking about it. That's it.
Great. Thank you. Bianca.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bianca. I'm based in Berlin, Germany. I've been able to join you a couple times. I'm glad to be back. I'm promoting self-directed education in Germany, which is difficult. We have unschooling, we have democratic schools, but unschooling is technically illegal, but people do it. So that's the situation. And I wrote my bachelor's thesis in political science a couple of years ago, interviewing families on their political and sociological background and their decisions on why do we do this unschooling in Germany? If it's forbidden, what does it do to our understanding of government and also the judicial system in Germany and these kinds of things? So yeah, I'm happy to be here. And I learned a lot from Jana Clemens in South Africa, thinking that maybe there's no such thing as a curriculum in self-directed education.
And David.
Hi, good morning. My name is David O'Connor. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a founder and a facilitator at Philly ALC in Philadelphia, PA. And we're about to begin our 5th year. We're opening a second, we have a 4-room indoor space downtown. And we're opening a second location at Aubrey Arboretum, which has been home to a homeschooling group for a long time. And that program ended and we sort of scooped it up and then continuing that along as well. So we'll enjoy some outdoor space, especially for our younger people. I'm very excited about. And I was at a couple meetings on this group very early on and just couldn't resist the topic today. I think about this a lot and I'm really interested to hear some additional thoughts on that. I think a lot about how in self-directed education we remove a lot of structure, and that it's important in self-directed education, I think, to replace that with tools around attention and intention and kind of discovery of meaning, especially like meaning and purpose, I guess is really what I mean. So I think those tools are the closest I can think of to a sort of inherent curriculum in self-directed education. I'm interested to tease out ideas. So thank you.
Oh, great. It's good to see everybody here, and especially people that we haven't seen for a while. I'm hoping that this represents a kind of rejuvenation of our group. To be honest, I was planning to start by a discussion of what we need to do to rejuvenate, because we've kind of dwindled in our last meetings. And I was beginning to wonder if maybe we should meet less often, or we need to change what we're doing in some way or something, because I was feeling like we were losing some of our energy and some of our original purpose, which is to be a forum for discussion of research and self-directed education, and to encourage new research and to bring in new people, especially graduate students who are interested in this area, and so that we could provide a sort of forum for discussion of their plans for research and all of that kind of thing. And it seemed like when we got started, that was kind of gearing up, but then over the last few months, it's kind of slowed down. And but I think this is hopeful to me, that we have a number of people here who haven't been here for a while. I don't know how much it has to do with the topic, how much it has to do with just sort of the stars are aligned correctly, and people are beginning to rethink about wanting to get moving on self-directed education research. So I think that I think I'm going to hold off on any discussion about changing what we're doing. I'm hoping that our next meeting and our next few meetings will be people talking about research ideas that they have, research they're doing, research they've done. And I'm also hoping that everybody will kind of invite people that you know who are doing such research, or students who are interested in such research and want to get started, but would like to be part of a forum that is helpful to them in the sense of hearing out their ideas, providing suggestions, and so on and so forth. So with that, I think we should just go on to, so I think this topic of, is there a curriculum related to self-directed education? I think it's an interesting topic. And I think it came out of Melissa's discussion last time. I don't know if you want to lead it off, Melissa, or should we just dive into it? Do you have anything to say that kind of you would want to do to just sort of get it started?
Sure, I could say a little bit. So the one reason why this really got a push is because some of us decided to submit a symposium proposal to AERA, which is this gigantic educational researchers conference. And we were looking through, where, potential places to submit. And one of the divisions is called curriculum studies. And so we read through, the curriculum studies call for proposals, and brainstormed a little bit and decided that was where we wanted to submit. So basically, we're trying to think about, is there what conversation could take place between curriculum theorists and self-directed education? Is there a space for us in curriculum studies? Curriculum studies it's not like curriculum and instruction. So a lot of times people think that's what it is, but it's not. It's very much, it's very theoretical, and very exploratory. So, thinking about people like Dewey, John Dewey, and his book Child in the Curriculum, which has some kind of interesting things to say. Bill Schubert and other curriculum theorists who say the key question in curriculum studies is what's worth knowing. What's worth knowing, what's worth doing, being, loving, enjoying, what's worth knowing. So, and then other curriculum theorists, have some other kind of interesting work that we could potentially draw on. Of course, Bill Ayers, who was involved with free schools way back in the early days, is in curriculum studies division. He calls curriculum studies the promiscuous others of the research world. So in educational research, and so that's just kind of a little bit about the thinking that I'm bringing to it. I still consider myself pretty much a newbie in curriculum studies. But I'm still trying to get my footing. And that's why I really wonder, is there a match between or something that could be done and said between self-directed education and curriculum studies? So there you go.
And I wanted to kind of add, because I think a lot of this came from a conversation we were having in the comments of the Google Doc, trying to work through this idea of can we be part of curriculum, and just to kind of throw out one piece of it, honest, looking at, can we define something as curriculum? But also, I come from a teaching background, and one of the hugest parts of that is we talk a lot about the hidden curriculum, right? That there's this idea of, yeah, we teach things that are printed out and we have this stuff that we do, but also there's the whole context of the school that is a curriculum of itself. And that's kind of where I tied that in. And I think that conversation we got a little off topic, but I'm glad we're coming back to it. I'm kind of excited about that.
Melissa, when you said the question, what's worth knowing, I couldn't help but think of the Oscar Wilde quote, "Nothing worth knowing can be taught." So I think that's kind of the essence of self-directed education in a certain way. So it's interesting. I mean, I think that of course, anytime one discusses anything that's kind of philosophical, a lot of the problem lies in how we're defining terms. And so, Peter Hartkamp, who I wish were here, made the interesting point that if you look up curriculum in the dictionary, or you look up at least the literal definition of curriculum, then obviously there's no such thing as a curriculum in self-directed education, because curriculum is the formal teaching of certain subjects, that you've decided there are certain things to be taught, and it's taught in a formal way. But if you rephrase it in such a way, one way to think about it is, with a different way, a looser way of thinking about curriculum, is that the adults who play a role in the decision about self-directed education and in the management of self-directed education centers and so on have some reason for doing what they're doing, have probably some expectations that would lead them to believe this is working or not working, have some expectations about what the people going through this might get out of it, or should get out of it, even if we want to use that term. And that in some broader sense, that could be a meaning of curriculum.
Yeah, I also just want to add to that, or piggyback off it a little bit. Like, I know when I taught in self-directed education at Liberated Learners, not only did I have those expectations that Peter was just outlining, but I also had like certain content resources that I would pull from and facilitate. And then also in like other classes and stuff like that, some kids would use, you know, online curriculums that I'm sure we're all familiar with, like Khan Academy and whatnot, just at a self-directed, personalized pace. So it's like an interesting question, because like curriculum does sort of work into self-directed education, you know, albeit of course on a voluntary, you know, decision-making level. But yeah, so that, I don't know, I just wanted to add to that a little bit.
Cami, did you have your hand up there?
Oh yeah, no, I think like to me, okay, so curriculum is kind of the subjects that we teach. I think that for me, where I see that all playing a role is that there are subjects, right? Like we're teaching self-direction. We're like, I mean, not in that formal way where we've got a list of, we're going to do these checklists and teach kids how to be self-directed. And we're teaching things like democracy. How does that play out? And we actually, if you're in like a Sudbury style, there is a real formal way. The law book is like this thick. And like, if you want to participate in the community, you have to go about doing that. So like things like democracy, I think are part of the inherent curriculum, especially in a Sudbury space. So like, I think for me, it's kind of broadening that word, not science. It's not math. It is kind of those bigger constructs. I don't know, that would still be subjects that we're teaching in those spaces.
If I could just real short. So Bill Pinar, another curriculum theorist, writes about the infinitive of curriculum, which is currere. And he says it's a course that you run, but he frames it as life being the course that you run, and that all the educational experiences that you have in that running the course of life, would be the curriculum that you're experiencing. So so then I'm wondering, well, in self-directed learning education, is everybody running? Are there aspects that everybody is kind of experiencing as they run this curriculum of self-directed education?
I remember Danny Greenberg would occasionally use the word curriculum, and he would say something like the curriculum of self-directed education, or the curriculum of Sudbury Valley, as he would have put it, is personal responsibility. I guess that's at least his version of what the expectation is of students. And in fact, there's a certain sense in which this is a required curriculum at a school like Sudbury Valley, because you don't have any other choice but to be personally responsible. And in fact, you'll be kicked out of the school if you're not personally responsible. So in some real sense, it is a curriculum. It's a mission of the school, and students who won't hold to it, who continuously violate the rules, who do irresponsible things that would destroy the school, they're gone.
I feel like I'm trying to distinguish between the question of like, does SDE as an umbrella concept have a curriculum versus spaces that practice SDE have their curriculums. We're talking about Sudbury School, but I'm also thinking about the unschooler at home, and I'm also thinking about the traveling the traveling family, and I'm also thinking there's like a lot of different ways to look at unschooling. So I think are we trying to talk about which side are we trying to talk about? And I think both are really interesting.
Good point.
The way we approach this in Green School is definitely self-directed education doesn't have a curriculum. So that's our starting point. But if I take the first idea of a curriculum as just simple translation of the word, not of the concept of the word as path, there are moments in which we have offerings that have a specific path, not necessarily the same for everyone. So that is where we make the difference, neither with milestones that we preset, but if a child wants to learn, for example, purple, and in order to get purple, you need to understand red and blue, that's a path. So we do red and blue before that, or the child does it. But because we don't see it as a curriculum, we don't see it in a specific timeline, neither the same for everyone, neither with specific destination for everyone. So this child specifically wants to do purple. So if the child wants to do red for half a year or 2 years, we don't stop that child. We don't say, hey, you're not yet purple, you need to be purple. You need to do this. So definitely, this is the biggest challenge for green school in explaining parents, because we have Romanian, and then they compare their child with another child from a typical school with the same age. And it's like, my child doesn't know what this child knows in Romanian. And it's Romanian, is the language of the country, is the basic. And I'm like, your child is reading this or doing that, or like not everybody is doing the same things in the same time. So whenever parents hear non-curricular, they don't even understand what that means. In a country where we do not speak about homeschooling, democratic education, even alternative education is a new concept. The fact that we need to constantly explain what curriculum is, to say, now that you get it, we don't do that. So this is our main work in curriculum, explaining what it is for them to understand that we don't do that, and then they freak out, and we need to complete the information with what we actually do. So a path, we have a path. It's there according to the different goals that they have. Some of them, they don't even define them as goals. Some of the kids specifically I want to learn this trick in skateboarding, but in order to learn that trick, you need to learn this position of your legs. And some of the kids, they are just, I want to just skateboard. And then you'll see them in one foot on the skateboard, or on their asses like on a sleigh, or just being ballerinas on the skateboard. So they have different ways to approach skateboarding, as they have different ways of approach Romanian. But how I hold the culture in green school is, we do not have curriculum in self-directed education, and we do not approach it, but we do understand it. So I want my teachers, my facilitators, to understand the national curriculum whenever it changes, for them to know what parents will ask for. That's me.
So it's interesting, as I listen to what you're saying, Sonia, and thinking about this, I think that the issue of curriculum, and also from what David said, the issue of curriculum is probably there are different reasons for thinking about it, depending on whether you are running a school or involved with a school like Sudbury School or an ALC or something, versus a non-schooler, unschooling parent. If you are involved with a school, parents want to know something positive about this place. They don't want to know just what's absent. This has always been my objection about the term unschooling. It tells what you're not doing. It doesn't tell what you are doing. And it's why I've always liked the term self-directed education. And then the question is, well, what do we mean by education? And then from that, the question becomes, well, then, if we're relating it to this, well, presumably education is the goal, and is that a curriculum? And what do we mean by education? I've always defined education as everything that you learn that helps you to live a satisfying and meaningful life. So we're trying to provide a setting in which children have the opportunity to learn what for them would be make for a satisfying and meaningful, and I might add, responsible life. So that's one way of thinking it. If you're an unschooling parent, you don't have the advertising problem, the problem of trying to convince other parents that this is something worth sending your kid to. This is not just an absence of school. There's something positive here that they're going to get. One of the things I think that, that study we did at the Hudson Valley Sudbury School, if you ask the kid, when we asked the graduates of the school, what was it that you most got out of the curriculum, out of the school, they would say it was social ability. They said very clearly, all this opportunity, just hang out and talk with other kids. I developed communication skills. I developed an understanding of other people, and partly through that, I developed an understanding of myself. So if you were to ask them what they got out of it, that they wouldn't have gotten out of a different school, it was largely social ability. That was a somewhat surprise to me. I mean, it's not unexpected once I saw it, but I didn't expect almost the unanimity about how important that was to them. So, but again, if you're a home-based unschooler, that's not so likely what you're initially thinking about. When you're initially thinking more like, my child is just really suffering in school. My child has real interests. I want my child to be able to follow those interests. So in some sense, the step from home-based unschooling to enrolling your child in some kind of a center for self-directed education may be a step in saying, well, there's something about being in a center that goes beyond just self-directed education. There's something there, there's some value to that. And maybe that part of what we're thinking about when we're thinking about curriculum at a center or a school for self-directed education.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Maria.
So a few points that came to my mind by listening to you. First of all, starting with Peter, that said that everything that was knowing is not teachable. So I want to ask the question, is curriculum related, is linked and tied to teaching, or not necessarily? Like the way that learning is not being taught necessarily, is curriculum tied to learning, to teaching or not? That's one question. The other thing that came to my mind regarding your last point, talking to unschooling families, well, they don't need to advertise, but they need to constantly fight with the environment, their parents, their sisters and brothers and uncles and neighbors and so on. And they have to justify what they do. So in a way, they also struggle with that, not in the advertisement way to get children, more children into the unschooling way, but to justify what they are doing for their children and proving them that they are actually good parents who care about their children. So they also have that need to actually emphasize on what they are doing and why it is good. And on the other hand, talking about the socialization, whenever I talk to them, that to many parents, well, I'm not sure if all of them mentioned this, but notable member of them said that actually the socialization happens when you are out of school, because when you are at a school, you are limited behind your desk and talking to your teacher, maybe the people next to you, your age, very limited, very structured in a way. But when children are not at school, they have the freedom of interacting with so many people in very meaningful way from different backgrounds and age and whatever. And this is actually socialization. So that in the unschooling setting. And there was one more thing that I forgot. If I remember, I will add it later.
I'm thinking like how interesting especially what Sonia was saying, but I think ties in a lot of ways, is how important like the order might matter to learning something. Like in order to do this, you have to know how to do this first. And I'm thinking about it with my study with Miriam, because what we're finding, as kind of expected, is like by being just immersed in the real world, you gain a different kind of understanding of math that's not decontextualized and abstract. And when you learn that first, I think it's very different from students who learn the decontextualized, abstract, rules of math. And so, so I was thinking then about the child in the curriculum, and what Dewey writes, which I haven't read the whole book, but this particular part that I read, he says, there's this sort of continuum between like real world experience that the child has and the scientific knowledge that's the body of knowledge out there. And, he talks about how you have to navigate between those two things. And if you just give the scientific body of knowledge, it's very problematic, because of lack of motivation, and it's dumbed down for the student and all these other things. So, I'm thinking like, if in order to learn certain things, is there an order? Naturally, you have to learn this before you learn this, before you learn that. And then at some point you get to that place of like, oh, now I need the scientific knowledge of it. I need to really engage in that body of knowledge. Like if you learn math naturally through daily life, but at some point you say, okay, I want to engage in the world of math beyond what I'm just acquiring in my daily life. So so I don't know. I'm just thinking a lot about this idea of a timeline.
David.
I think just bouncing off of that, Melissa, I think one of the most useful things I've discovered in working in self-directed education is that learning is much more circular than it is linear, and that we have this concept of a curriculum as a path that has one direction to it, where it's much more like, I think, like a field that you're wandering in and discovering. And so I think that's one thing. And the other is the image that's been kind of building in my mind as I've been listening is that in a traditional school, maybe that a curriculum is like this sort of like shield almost in the structure, and that it kind of like protects you a little bit from the rest of the world and protects you a little bit from the environment, and like, don't pay attention to this, just focus on this, and creates this nice little kind of like tunnel to move through. And there's of course some, that has some kind of productive use in one way of thinking about it, but that when we remove that completely, you're just, the curriculum does purely almost become the sort of the environment that you're in. And so like choices about where you go and where you are and what you're surrounded by very much becomes the curriculum, in the sense of like, I need to both like, could sort of soak in the information available to me, or like just like the little facts and tidbits and building that into knowledge, but even more so like, how do I, what are the levers that I need to like get things out of this environment, and where do I plug in, and who am I, and become like defined by it. And so I think just like, the place that you are sort of becomes a curriculum, very much like that. The life is the curriculum. I'm thinking very much just like the difference in my kids I see based on the environment that they're in, and the different ways that they grow, and just kind of how that's almost everything. That, and sort of like the quality of the people that they're around, in the sense of like the adults like give a lot of love, and do the peers like reflect back a powerful version of themselves to my kids, versus the peers that give them like the fun house mirror distorted version of themselves back to them. So environment and people.
I think what you said, Melissa, and kind of tied also with what David just said, is about what you said about order. I think that's something that we see and you probably already said this, but something that is seen very commonly is that the order in learning something typically is that you start off playing with it, fiddling around with it. You get interested in it, you develop some ability in it, and then at some point, depending upon what it is and depending upon what your goals with it, you may want to start studying it more formally in some way. And at that point, you might want to be working with an expert, or you might want to be working with some kind of online tutorial, or you might want to be. So we see this, for example, and maybe it's most clearly seen in the area of music, where people just start off messing around with a musical instrument. They become pretty good at it. They clearly enjoy it, but at some point, some number of them feel, I would really like formal instruction from somebody who really and truly is a master of this instrument. And that's when they apply to Juilliard or to some such place, or they find a tutor, or they, so I think that happens, and it may happen in some other realms as well. Or I've decided because of so one way to think about the curriculum, there's a lot of different ways to think about the curriculum for self-directed education, but one way to think about it is discovery. The curriculum is to discover what you're interested in. And so the environment should be one that offers the possibility of discovery, possibility of discovery within a fairly broad range of areas. If there's no musical instruments and nobody ever engages in music, nobody's going to discover music as an interest. If nobody reads, if there's no history books around, nobody's interested in history, nobody's ever going to discover history as an interest. That's a slight exaggeration, because you can't really separate yourself from all of these things in the world that you're living in. But there's something to be said that the curriculum is to provide the curriculum, when we think of it from the viewpoint of the adult, providing the context or environment for self-directed education, is to provide an environment that is supportive of discovery in a rather wide range of potential areas.
You just reminded me, Peter, that actually this kind of a approach to curriculum, first of all, was explicitly formulated by Reggio Emilia early childhood education, where they talk about the environment as a third teacher. That you have to have a rich learning environment, first of all, in order for children to discover their interest, because if you don't, exactly what you said, if nobody's playing music, they will never discover it in that situation. The second thing is, in this cultural offer that was done in Belgrade for about 30 years, up until just the end of the wars, that was also the reasoning that the rich culture for children and with children is the curriculum, and the children are then immersed in a very rich cultural offer, not only within an institution but in the whole society. And so they had the institutions that worked outside of school to provide lots of various ways for children of all ages to socialize in clubs, cultural centers. And the way how Belgrade works was always that a lot of things are on the walking basis and walk-in basis, and there was always, and still there is, a lot of freedom. Okay, so I have to leave you. Sorry about that.
I can continue if no one wants to add something. I wanted to share three perspectives, very short. The first one, me as a teacher trainer that works in a public system, as a freelancer, I'm hired by schools to work with their teachers. They have two main pains, let's say. The first one is this generation today. And I bet you all know this, like the generation today that if they would not be how they are, everything would be perfect. Basically, a school without kids would be nice. But the second one is the curriculum. Also, Romania is wishing to be a high achieving country. And in communism, education was a luxury, but not because it was expensive, just because it was free. It was and still is free, but to be able to go to school, they required a lot of knowledge that you have in advance. So if you want to go to university, basically you are supposed to know everything that a graduate would have, a university graduate would have, just to go for admission. So they were difficult. And the reality now is Romanians are still dreaming and romanticizing that time in life for 30 years ago, when education was not for everyone. And what we all hear constantly in Romania is like, of course, this person has a university degree. Everyone has one now, but the content in the world is not the same. So anyway, we keep hearing that our major system problems is the curriculum that has too many topics and too much content for every topic. We also look like, for Romanians, the American system is a joke, because what American system, so this is, I'm not saying American just because you are here, but because that's a reference for us. So we look up in German system for content. We look at the French system for age when you start the school. Soon they will take the baby out of the womb to go to school. And we look to Americans to compare each other and to feel us better. We are better. So basically, this is the main wound is this is a competition-based system. So it's a lot of content. We want to be smart. So we don't look at the fact that more than half of our kids and youth are failing that curriculum because the curriculum it's failing them. So we add too much information in it. So I just wanted to give you a bit of my context. My context is the curriculum is not just oppressive by definition, is oppressive by also the cultural ideal of this country, willing to be like this, and not that. So basically, we have, I would say, geography, history, and some of the math at the level of a high schooler in a different country. We have it in general school. So we put a lot of information there. So when I say non-curricular, parents are relieved because it's non-curricular, but then they get scared because it's non-curricular, because it's what they know. And I wanted to say something else about the kids, but I will come back to that because I actually like that point more, but I forgot it. Yeah, I will come back. Sorry.
Sonia, one thing that I was thinking of as you talked is that relating the curriculum to the national identity, the national beliefs, the cultural beliefs of the nation. I think in the United States, it's very easy to make that relationship, at least in a way that most people should be able to understand it. In the United States, we have, some would argue, extreme beliefs in independence, self-initiative, self-direction, as opposed to those socialists over there. We have a strong belief in democracy, participatory democracy. We kind of believe in the democracy of the old-fashioned New England village. And so certainly, this was Danny Greenberg's pitch. If you want to raise a child to be an American, what better place than a place where the community is run like an old-fashioned New England town where self-direction and self-initiative are required. And so people are learning to take responsibility for themselves. They're learning democratic procedures. They're learning not only their responsibility to themselves, but their personal responsibility to the community by virtue of being part of this community. So again, I think that he would argue that there is a pretty clear curriculum, maybe with quotation marks around it, that is very much related to the national identity of being an American.
We started to have in Romania the hidden curriculum talk for a while now. So not just curriculum, but hidden curriculum. Our every reform in education, and we do this like 3-4 times a year, every time when we change the Ministry of Education, and we do change him or her 3 times a year, we have a reforming curriculum. So basically what they managed to do now is to take out the well-being ones, the creative ones, because we need less hours. Just this is one, but so curriculum is a problem, and we have a saying here in Romania: "Rău cu rău, dar mai rău fără rău." It's bad with the bad, but it's worse without the bad. So that's how we approach curriculum. I remember what I wanted to say about the kids. So I got this feedback one month ago, and I observed it since I got the feedback. It was a family telling me about how their kid is acting outside of the green school bubble, because parents were like, "This is our bubble. It's a bubble. It's just a bubble. So it's just a bubble." And I said, I always said, yeah, the bubble will increase and eventually it will pop up and it will splash other people. So it's fine. So this kid is with us for probably 4 or 5 years now. He's 7. And he, I quote, embarrasses his parents with every extra green school thing that he's doing. So whenever he's interested in something, he's asking his parents to enroll him in a class of whatever. And when the kid is there, he is demanding things from the teacher. And the teacher constantly wants to go back to we do things like this, and then that. But the kid wanted to know a specific thing, and he's always put on pause because there's a curriculum, there's an order of the things, a path, and not how I used the word path before. So I started to observe this, including in my own process. I started to observe that we start to splash people, but not by not accepting their path anymore. So the kids start to be old enough, because we don't have a lot of teenagers who are doing this. We started with little ones and we grow with them. Our oldest one is 13. So they started to have interests outside of the school a lot, and they keep asking. So I realized, I talked with people in some Facebook groups of hobbies or something. Kids from my school, they are perceived problem kids, because they always interrupt, they always have requests, and they never listen. And I'm like, do you listen? Because this is what I wanted to say. Outside of a typical curriculum, there is the intention. And when the kid really wants to learn something, can dive into a form of formal education if that is reasonable to the kid. If it's not reasonable, we talk about it. And I will close this with a memory. We organized this year living library method for people in self-directed education. And one girl, she was a student in a high school, I think in Germany, in a democratic school. And she said, when I moved from my school to the other school, I was observing, she moved from self-directed to typical schooling. I was observing how I was super passionate about physics. And then all the kids in the physics classroom, they were depressed and not willing to be there. So she moved to a different school because she wanted to become something in science, but I do not remember. So that was her passion and she chose it. And she chose all that context, but no one there wanted the same thing as her. So the difficult part for her, it was being surrounded by people who were obliged to be there because of the curriculum that she chose. But so I had that in my mind and I wanted to share with you because sometimes kids, self-directed kids, with all the freedom from their families and their schools that they are part of, they want formal and they are willing to deal with all the context because they already have some competencies regarding learning to learn or some autonomy or self-confidence and some words that I do not know in English. They have that and they are able to go and say, I want this. Yes, it will suck, but I want it. And some of the others, same age, are not able to have the same privilege, I would say. And that's it.
I think what you're saying is very consistent with what we found, what Gina Riley and I found in our study of grown unschoolers when they went off to college, for those who did go off to college, and similarly what I found in the study I did long ago of Sudbury Valley graduates who went off to college. Often the biggest complaint they had was that their classmates were not interested in the subject. And related to that, many of them complained about how immature their classmates were. And I think a lot of it had to do, maybe part of it is due to the qualities that I talked about earlier that are possibly a curriculum for self-directed education, which means responsibility and self-direction. But part of it, I think, also is that those people who go from self-directed education to college have some clear reason for doing so. They're not going just the way other people are going, where it's basically like a continuation of high school. To them, it's required, in their mind it's required, and maybe it literally is required by their family. They see, and it's just something they have to endure, like they did high school. Whereas for at least the majority of students who go from self-directed education, it's their own deliberate choice and they've got a reason for doing it. It may or may not always be a good reason, but it's a reason that they have in their mind. Either they're pursuing a career that requires it, or occasionally, I mean, this is every professor's dream, is the student, one student who told me in an interview that I went to college because I'd been doing all these things on my own. I'd read, and I thought, what a dream. Somebody who really understands this, laying it all out for me, explaining it to me, learning from real experts who really know boy, if I had a half of my students were like that, I'd still be teaching at Boston College. Those students are one in 1,000, and usually they're older students, not kids right out of high school. So I think that's a good point. It's interesting too that those who, there's a tendency to think, and to some degree it might be true, and I think it depends on who you're talking about. There's a tendency to think that in higher education, or when self-directed education student seeks a course, that they would want it to be kind of a progressive course. They would want it to be taught kind of like in a progressive school where there's a lot of kind of playing around and what do you think and this and that. But very often, at least, they want the opposite. They want it laid out. I'm taking a course. I could do the other thing myself, but I'm taking a course. I want it straight. Give it to me straight. Let's not play games here. I think that I'm not speaking for everybody there, but this is some of the comments of people who went on to colleges. They liked the fact that this was it was laid out very clearly for them. They didn't always agree, and they treasured the opportunities to argue with the professor, and maybe not all professors like that, but and for some more than others. And I have to admit that there were others who complained about college because they really disliked the formal structure of the courses. So I think you find the whole range.
I think it's the key is in that self-directed or self-education is owned by the student, and they are the driving it in any way they want. And so the number of definitions and what some people like or don't like, or how many like it this way or another way, it's all legitimate because it comes from them. And yes, and also it's not just like I would only prefer straight. In some things, yes, because I'm not interested in any deeper knowledge about the motor of my car, but I'd like to know how to do a good diagnosis, for instance, and to what specialist to take it. But in some other areas, I may be interested in every little detail from all the possible sides and for all the different opinions. So there are areas in our lives where we have different engagement with the material in a different way. But the key is that we are in control. The person is in control, and that all these other ways of environmental and instructional ways and whatnot you have are just available there.
There's another curriculum studies scholar from the 70s. His name was Joseph Schwab. And he talked about curriculum as having 4 common places. And the common places are the teacher, the student, the subject, and the milieu. And I think, one of the things that has come up a lot is this idea of the milieu, the context, the sociocultural context that is kind of there for the students, and providing that opportunity for discovery. And then the student, I think it's the student's, own self-interest and drive. So then what do we say? And then the subject, it would seem to me the subject is, you can't even really pin down anything about a subject except maybe ideas that there are certain things everybody needs to know to be successful adults. And maybe then, that's that curricular commonplace is just the things that you need to be a successful adult. And then but the teacher, I think the teacher just varies so much. Sometimes you're looking on the internet for things, but sometimes you are asking people around you to teach you certain things. There are so many moments, that just come up spontaneously where someone is teaching someone else something. So anyway, I just wanted to introduce that idea in case that might be helpful again for us thinking about curriculum.
Heather, you had your hand up a moment ago. You got to unmute.
There we go. Yeah, I'm just thinking about the idea of what's been brought up a bunch of times now, and the invisible, the milieu, the environment, and to me that's the primary teacher. That's been my experience, and that we're not just learning, curriculum. I think we immediately might think of human-made curriculum, but there's more than human world that we're living in that's speaking to our body and our cells at every moment and with every breath, and that's informing us way more than anything that our prefrontal cortex is aware of. So for me, there's something about developing in ourselves as learners the ability to listen in that way, because life is an improvisation, and that responsibility, the ability to respond, is about listening and sensing that that net of life that we are in, and part of that is, yeah, being able to narrow down and focus on certain things. We probably would go out of our minds if we couldn't do that. But to be able to remain more open, to have more space to be open to the actual reality of what this moment holds. And in school, I feel like that's one of the biggest wounds that happens, is that that we're forced to direct our attention in ways that's just ridiculously narrow, and just literally robs us of our own right to let our awareness go where like the life force coming through us would have it go. So um, lots of thoughts around all of that, but I wanted to share something that my daughter, who's 18 and has been an unschooler her entire life, shared with me recently about, she just went off to Europe. It was like kind of a big jumping out of the nest moment, and she was sharing how in the last couple of years of since we opened this self-directed learning community, that really a primary thing that she received from that, because up until then we'd been just our own unschooling family. We hardly knew anybody else that did it, you know. And in the last couple of years, we've had this community that has come together around self-directed learning. And she shared how for her that a central meaning of what's happened through that, having that community, is a sense of belonging. And, you know, of course, without a sense of belonging, you don't really want to even live. Like that's primary human need. We need that. And so she was, yeah, really just expressing how nowhere else, like, you know, even though she's danced for, like, she's a dancer, so she'd be at the dance studio for many hours every day, you know, for years on end. Like, even though she was in that community, that the closeness never happened. The sense of belonging really never landed. And we've talked about why is that in the self-directed community, we feel that. And, you know, we kind of contemplated about, seems that when you take out the focus on content, kind of fabricated content, which is fine and it's right, you know, she learned to be a dancer, you know, by focusing on content. But when you take out the focus on specific content, then what life as it's flowing through us wants to do is to connect with yourself, connect with your body, connect with those around you, connect with the environment, connect with discovery. Like, that seems to be what just naturally happens when you take out the busy work. And so, and just to finish up with, I remember reading a book a woman wrote who is a hospice nurse, and she had interviewed many people about on their deathbeds, you know, like, what were your regrets? And the main regret, the number one regret, was not living a life that felt like my own. And for me, when you raise a child as a self-directed learner, that's what they gain, and that's irreplaceable. So if there's a curriculum for me, that would be the kind of the goal of the curriculum.
Yeah, I think that's well put. You know, one other thought I had too is, I think somebody already used the term hidden curriculum, but there used to be quite a lot of writing, I haven't seen it recently, about the hidden curriculum of public schooling. And so that's another use of the term curriculum, where the curriculum, it refers to the methods being used in school, and that's the curriculum rather than to the content of what's being taught. That the real things people are taking away come from the hidden curriculum, and the hidden curriculum typically is things like obedience. You know, you can't possibly pass if you don't obey. I've often said that the primary lesson in public schools is obedience, because the only way you can fail is to not do what you're told to do, and the only way you can pass is to do what you're told to do, whether or not you think it's meaningful to do it. So obedience, conformity, competition, reward, doing things for rewards as opposed to doing things because they're fun. These have been talked about by critics of school, particularly in the 1970s, as the hidden curriculum of school and as really the potent forces in school. These are the things people take away from school. They may forget the content of the subjects, but they are very affected by the hidden curriculum. And so one way to think about curriculum and self-directed education is not to compare it to the overt curriculum of public schools, but to compare it to the hidden curriculum of public schools. What is our hidden curriculum, if we want to use that term?
That's very interesting. I just was having similar thoughts, and to extend that also, hidden curriculum is very hard to see when you're a fish in water. So you also have to develop a sense of not belonging. Also, experience different hidden curricula, different and strange communities, in order to become aware of what's your community and your sense of belonging, and to see it. So in a way, like anthropologists had these two terms, emic and etic, like a view from inside and a view from outside. And I don't think that either one is enough.
Well, this has been very interesting. We've been at it for an hour and a quarter, pretty much, and we probably ought to bring it to a close. But if somebody has a final comment, or two people have a final comment to make, I don't want to, especially if you haven't had much chance to present, to do that now. Bianca.
Yeah. Well, what I thought of earlier when we talked about the hidden curriculum was, and also Sonia, the situation in Romania sounded a bit comparable to the situation in Germany, whereas when you choose self-directed education as a family, you have a curriculum of liberation in it. You can't have it without liberation, without the thought of, okay, we're going against what the mainstream does, against what's officially expected from us as parents, and we're really, as an unschooling family, we are facing like severe consequences, and yet we do it. So if you can't do it, if you don't have that liberation element in it, and that's kind of that came through really clearly for me. But that's also locally, like I thought of, okay, if we do have a number of centers that people can choose from and still be self-directed, because even in German Sudbury schools, we have like these, there are a few places that I would say are really self-directed, because they really, don't have to do any exams in the end of the 10-year cycle, or they don't, they don't say you have to come 5 days a week, 5 hours. So there's this narrowing element in even Sudbury schools in Germany. So yeah, that was something that came up through clearly for me, that it's a local thing, and that's really different from the US and from other places. How does that change self-directed education? I'm going to think more about that.
Thank you. Anybody else want to? Jim, you've got your hand up. You've got to unmute.
I have lots of thoughts about the subject, and won't go through all of them, but just my comment from my perch in self-directed democratic schools is that I find great differences among the self-directed democratic schools in terms of curriculum, and I find it useful to distinguish and examine separately the idea of curriculum, meta curriculum, implied curriculum, non-traditional curriculum as compared with curriculum. And I see great differences among the schools, and also in the Circle Schools 38 years, evolution, often reflected in our taglines and metaphors that we use in explaining the school, evolution through various understandings of curriculum. Lot more to the subject, but that's my 2 cents for the moment.
That sounds like it would be a great research question for somebody who wants to pursue it. The evolution of these within democratic schools and the differences across democratic schools. It would be, I think it would be very interesting to know more about that.
And I think one of the fascinating things to me is that with that kind of study, I think one can detect a direction or a momentum that may point to an unachievable ideal in self-directed education or in self-directed democratic schools. And also, I think an important piece of it is that the term itself, self-directed, as has emerged in various ways in this conversation, there really is no such thing as self-directed once you start taking into account, as several people made references to, the environment in which it's taking place, the context. And I don't think we want what we might regard as a pure self-directed education. So yeah, I agree. It would be a fascinating study.
Once you get into thinking this way, you get into the philosophical dilemma: is free will possible? From a materialistic point of view, everything we do is absolutely determined.
But even if you accept free will, though,
yeah,
the vicissitudes of life and the physical environment,
right.
and the cultural norms and the institutional aims and the way that the institution expresses itself,
Yes.
even if you fully accept the truth of free will, there's still so much that that says that we can aim for agency in community, but not really true self-direction. That originates only in introspection. There's got to be more to it.
Sounds like there's a lot more fodder there for discussion and possible research. I wonder if there is anybody who is at a point where they would be happy to present at our next meeting next month. You've got some research idea or research in progress that you'd like to talk about. We don't have to draw from this group, but if there's anybody ready to do that, it would be good to declare that and get that decided. So
I have something that's not a oh, go ahead, Anna, you go first.
I just wanted to say Melissa wants to say something.
Oh, thank you. This is actually this is not a research topic, but more what you had talked about, Peter, in terms of the group, because I was thinking as Matthew spoke about the idea of having a bibliography, reference list, a library, even like a Zotero library, something like that, with, a resource for all of us of like, top, content related to self-directed education. And secondly, my son is actually a computer coder, and he is between jobs and can design websites. And I was thinking, what if we had a website that had on it could have a list of like key references in self-directed education. So I don't know if that's a topic we want to talk about, but it was just an idea that had occurred to me that I wanted to bring up.
I think it's a great idea, and to talk more generally, how might we move forward in a way that will do a better job than we're doing now of promoting self-directed education? And so the idea of having a website, maybe we could even just amongst ourselves, I mean, I'd be glad to make a contribution, come up with enough money to hire somebody with a little bit of money, because I don't think anybody's going to do it totally without some kind of remuneration, to create a bibliography of research on self-directed education, to post the references, to post PDFs of articles pertaining to self-directed education, so somebody can easily find that. Now, ASDE to some degree has that, but it's a more extensive kind of resource, and maybe Sonia knows more than I do about it, but that's a question of whether we would be duplicating what ASDE already has or not. But some kind of, and even maybe something like an annual conference on self-directed of research on self-directed education, so that people, for example, graduate students as well as professors who are doing research, can have on their vita that they presented at the annual conference of the Association for the Research Association for Self-Directed Education, something like that. It kind of, part of what my hope was as a mission here is to make self-directed education a respected and known part of academia. So that it's if present, it's pretty much unknown, and you know, there was conferences and all kinds of other things, but not so much this. There are all kinds of I mean, there are practical conferences on how to run how to run a self-directed school and those kinds of things, but to actually have a academic research conference, I think might be a new thing. So something to think about. I mean, so maybe if we don't get a volunteer I think our first priority should be if somebody's ready to present with their research, but an alternative would be to follow through on this suggestion, Melissa, that what might we do as a group, and how would we do it to do more than we currently are in promoting self-directed education as an academic discipline. One of the things we did, and I think we need a report on this, was to sort of declare that we're going to help out with the journal Other Education and make it more of an official and recognized journal. Academic, you know, where are we on that? And what more can we do along that line? Gina, who unfortunately isn't here today, couldn't be here today because of her busy week, I think could give us a report on the status of that, but there's maybe more we can do there. You know, I think we need to do things to be more accepted within the academic community. This is a legitimate realm of thinking about children's development and education. It's very hard, it's still very hard to publish in the standard journals. And right now, the journals where we can publish are kind of regarded as secondary journals. And so there's two approaches. One would be to get the standard journals more interested in us. The others would be to raise the status of the journals that already are interested in us.
Yeah, to that end, I think having conversations with scholars in other, areas of education, like curriculum studies, or, other kinds of, trying to find those pockets, and trying to do some work with them, to bring them on board. I'm just thinking in my head, so like I'm also involved in the Ikeda Soka studies field, and my dissertation chair is really kind of the pioneer of the field, and he put together a co-edited book with people in the curriculum studies field, each engaging with the topic of Ikeda Soka studies. And he's done, like symposia with other scholars in that field. And so he's trying to put other people in conversation with that topic. That was one approach that he took. So yeah.
Good. All right, well, unless we get some other suggestion, and I really think, we should be open to anybody who's ready to present research, well, then maybe this would be a good topic for our next meeting or some upcoming meeting relatively soon.
I want to say that not next month because it's too fast for me, but 2 months from now, I can take a look with all of you if you want on my research on of emotional well-being, sense of belonging in self-directed spaces, because I've been researching a bit and then I got blocked because COVID. I left earlier from US, then I got back in it. So I have some ideas. Basically, I'm half blocked, half creative, but I do not know if I'm going in the right direction. So I'm not ready for September because September means opening the school again, new people. That's too fast for me. But 2 months from now, or anything other than September, I could present that, and
okay, well,
would need the help also.
why don't we plan on October, unless somebody else comes along with something that seems more urgent than that, but why don't we plan on your presenting in October? That would be great.
Okay.
Any other final words? Okay, well, great to see you all, and have a wonderful rest of the day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Great to see you
Thank
all.
you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.